Thank you. So can everybody hear me okay? Yeah? Awesome. Perfect. So today's session, as Thomas said, is about continuous delivery within Azure. My name is Ralf Waldenmaier, working for Microsoft in Germany within a group called the One Commercial Partner Group. We are basically focusing on partners delivering value around the Microsoft ecosystem. If you want to have more information about that, I kindly invite you to join my colleague over here, Akio. He has a booth over there in the main, or in this food area. Talk to him and he will be able to provide you some more information about that. Today's talk, as I said, is about continuous delivery, and what I expect you to take away is that at the end of the session you should basically have an understanding of what do we mean by continuous delivery. And I will show you a few examples of how you can basically deliver to regular websites using Azure App Services. Probably you also have some customers that are dealing with on-prem virtual machines and you have to deploy there as well. So is there a possible solution to address such scenarios as well? And of course, we will check how we can do that with Sitecore itself. We believe as Microsoft that VSTS provides us, or provides you as well, with the best DevOps solution, and this is something which is basically my mission, that you believe the same after my talk. So let's see if I can do that. Okay, first of all, something nobody of us wants to see, and I'm asking this round, who has seen this before? Yeah, right, everybody. So it's also me who saw this before. So this is the worst case scenario. Why am I showing that? I'm showing that because we want to have something at hand that gives us the chance to circumvent such things. One thing could be to say, okay, we don't want to get into the situation because we probably have an environment supporting us, giving us the possibility to check it first and then go into production. But what happens if we have some kind of differences and we see this in production? We want to have tech at hand that says we want to reduce our mean time to recovery, so to say, in order to not get such a situation again, or to reduce the amount of time a customer actually sees that. Because all of us have been using, for instance, popular map services. What happens if you experience such a thing? You're going away, and if you are not that popular, you might never come back. If you're popular, of course, there might be customers that will come back. So we try to avoid exactly this situation. We think that continuous delivery could be a pillar to circumvent such a thing. And continuous delivery for us comes in multiple parts. So let me explain it. On the lower left corner, you see two guys, basically the developer and also the operations guy. This is, of course, DevOps, the keyword here. What we understand based on that is that it is important right now that those guys work closely together, because the operations guy must provide some piece of code that is in kind of describing what the infrastructure should look like. And of course, the developer is providing the code that should run on top of this infrastructure. We want to have that as code. And for that, we also want to have it in a kind of a source control system, of course, of your choice. Whenever one of those guys triggers or commits a change, what should happen? Of course, we want to build a package, or we want to build something that should then be tested. Unit testing is key for ensuring our software quality, basically. If our tests pass, we want to provide a package that can be stored somewhere. And the idea behind that, this package should not contain any configuration. Why? The reason for that is this package should then be deployed to different stages, for instance, development or production, whatnot. And in addition to that package, you deploy some, or you add some configurations targeting this specific environment. This allows us to say, whenever we have a failure in production, use the package you have, which was known as good before, provide the same configuration that was working before, and roll it out. The whole cycle is called continuous delivery. If you combine the build and the test step, this is what we call continuous integration. Basically, each and every commit you do should, in the end, result in kind of a package, and of course, this must be tested. What we can see over here is basically another example which has nothing to do with Sitecore, but should show you that this particular piece of software, which I'm going to introduce, VSTS, is targeting everything. So what we see here is from source control to deployment. And in this particular case, we want to tackle a scenario where we want to deploy Docker container into a Kubernetes cluster. This also can be done with Visual Studio Team Services. For us, it doesn't matter if we, on the left-hand side, have a GitHub repository, which has nothing to do with Microsoft at all. We are just using that technology. For us, it's important that we have something in between, the glue in between, allowing you to say, wherever your code is, build it in this particular environment, and push your packages or your Docker images, if you are working with those guys, wherever it is feasible for you. And then have some kind of technology that allows you to deliver exactly those packages you stored wherever you want into your final deployment or into your final environment. And that saying, VSTS, it's pronounced Visual Studio Team Services, and here we say it is for any application, any developer, and any platform. The name might be confusing. In this audience, it might be pretty straightforward because you might be Microsoft-minded. You're probably developing in C# when you're doing Sitecore. But if you are a Java developer and you hear Visual Studio, you might say, this is nothing relevant for me because I'm not doing any Microsoft stuff. This is not true, and I will show you in a bit why. We believe it is the best tool if you target Azure deployments. The reason for that is it is well integrated. The tasks that you can choose to set up your pipeline are giving you, for instance, the possibility to say, if you have a subscription within Azure and you have several services, there might be combo boxes that are populating your services, and it makes it extremely easy to deploy your binaries to those services. It also is enterprise class. What does it mean? You can integrate it with your Azure Active Directory from your customer or from yourself. And you can handle extremely large code bases. What does it mean, extremely large code bases? We as Microsoft are eating our own dog food. We are also using Visual Studio Team Services, not only for Visual Studio Team Services itself, but also Windows is developed using this thing. And this means there are repositories with the size of around, don't nail me on the numbers, 370 gigabytes of data stored within GitHub. We had to provide our own GitHub Git virtual file system in order to support it. But also there are 25,000 developers working on that platform for Windows only. So that might be sufficient, I guess, also for you. It integrates, as it was shown previously, also to open source software ecosystems. You can integrate to Jenkins, whatever you can imagine, it might be supported. Where should I start, actually? Well, you can go to the Visual Studio Team Services portal, create an account, and then create your projects. You can have a multitude of projects. You can also go to the Azure portal, we will see that in a bit, to set up your basic scaffold of your environment. Even within Visual Studio, it's also integrated. If you have a .NET project, a website running, you can say, right-click, create me a DevOps solution or a VSTS integration solution out of that. Of course, this is just scaffolding, and you might do your own stuff in order to fulfill the requirements that you have. And of course, you can do it via some scripts as well. A service that you might have come into in touch with already, I might ask, who have used Sitecore on Azure already in this audience? Oh, quite a lot. And then you might know this service already. Azure App Service, and there in particular the web apps, which basically allows you to host a website and don't care about the actual infrastructure. It's platform as a service, and deploy your website, and it's running fine there. And in the first demo, I'm going to show you how easy it is actually to deploy to Azure App Services. Okay, let's see. Yep. Okay, so what you can see over here, who has worked with Visual Studio Team Services before? Quite a lot, okay. There are a few hands, a few guys who didn't raise their hand. I will give a quick introduction. So this is the overview where I can see all my projects that I have within my Visual Studio Team Services account available under visualstudio.com. By the way, in the last row, can you read that? Yeah, thank you. So I have created a project called Azure Projects. And what you can see over here is that there are different parts within such a project. Of course, the most important part might be code. This can be either, this is a source control repository, can be either Team Foundation version control or GitHub, whereas GitHub or Git-based repository is the default. You can have your work tracked basically, so we are supporting popular processes like Scrum or Agile development processes by providing you with a rich user interface where you can say, okay, I'm going to plan my next sprint, I'm going to take this task in a Kanban-like manner, but this is not the focus right now. And of course, important for today is the build and release part. So let me quickly show you the code for this particular demo. It is, as I said, a Git repository. It has my standard Hello World.NET application hosted. Of course, nothing fancy. It has my demo site and it has my tests project. So what is needed in order to say I want to build this particular guy and I also want to deploy this to Azure? Here I'm going to my builds. There are already some defined, but those are for later. I'm saying I'm creating a new build. It will ask me what is the actual source. As I said, that we are supporting different sources as well. You can also have an external Git repository or a Subversion repository. It asks me for the respective project and the repository that I have. I can have a multitude of repositories, within one project. And by continuing, it asks me for a template. Of course, you can start from scratch, which might, in the sake of time, not be a good idea. But since we have a standard ASP.NET application, we are going to use this particular template. What it will do is, it will create a scaffold for me, which I could use right out of the box as it is right there. So this sounds familiar to you, I guess. So one important thing I want to talk is an agent queue. For us, it is important that we are allowing any environment. And what you can see over here is, imagine you want to create some Java application that is typically running on Linux. It might be a good idea to build this project on a Linux environment. We are providing you with a hosted Linux agent that you can use out of the box. You're paying for the minute that you're using that. And you don't have to deal with anything in particular. You don't have to provide your own virtual machine. if you have the requirement that you need some third-party libraries installed on your build server, of course you can do that. You can say, here's my virtual machine. It might also be in your enterprise, and say, I'm installing a small agent on that machine and my build is running there. We now even support macOS. So if you have the requirements and your customers are asking, hey, I want to have an iOS application targeting the Apple ecosystem, please provide me this particular guy. You can build your stuff with the macOS hosted agents, and you don't need to have the Mac running under your desks anymore with a particular agent installed on it. So this is already supported out of the box. Of course, in my case, I'm choosing hosted Visual Studio Visual Studio 2017. I have some tasks over here. Of course, I need to restore my Nugget packages. I need to build the solution where I can modify my MS Build parameters as necessary, and I want to test my assemblies. As I said, you can add much more to that, but for the sake of time, let's just use it as it is. Save this particular guy and queue it. And what it is doing is, this might take some 2 minutes or so, it will grab the sources, compile everything, execute all the tasks that we have seen, and finally I do have a package that I can deploy to my Azure environment. And speaking about the Azure environment, I have set up a environment already, which is over here. It consists of 2 things. One is my app service plan, which is basically a definition of what should the virtual machines that I want to use look like. And then I have a second thing, which is the app service itself, which is basically describing a web application that should run on top of these servers. And my goal right now is to say, create me a package and deploy it to the app service located over here. To prove that it is actually happening, let's open this guy. And this is providing me with the default experience when you have created the website. So nothing special, it's pretty new. Let's see what our build is doing. So what we can see over here is it's fulfilling all the tasks I have given to him. And most importantly, I can also see what it is doing. I am getting the complete log. So it's not flying blindly. It's something I can see what is happening. So this might, I guess, run for some more seconds. And this is especially important in case, I know it will never happen, but in case you have configured something showing you errors, it gives you the ability to drill into that. While waiting for that, let's look into some other things. We are back to the configuration of this particular build. You can also say, should this happen with each and every commit? So it's just a click over here, allowing me to say, I have a commit, I want to have a build after that. And not only that I can say I have a build after that, I can also have a linked release definition, which is then automatically releasing it to probably my development environment. So each and every commit you're doing could result in a kind of production environment. From my previous job, we exactly were crazy enough to do that. We had a massive test set, and we were doing exactly what I said. With each and every commit, we had this massive test suite running, and we were trusting this particular test suite, and that was resulting in production. So you can do that. And as we heard, even for Sitecore, it is very important to deliver faster. We heard about their new schedules today, and this is exactly what we want. Okay, my job is done. I can see the logs. I can also have an overview over here. I can see since this is the demo project, I can see what tests were running, how fast they were, and even very important is the thing that I can see what changes were associated with this particular build. So if you have customers asking, hey, what were the things that you delivered for this particular build, you can have a task configured giving you kind of a HTML document or a markdown document having all this information and of course referring to the work items your developers were working on. And of course I'm getting an artifact and I can have a look there, which is a drop, and this is exactly what you would expect out of a standard deployment stuff. I'm getting a zip file which I can use to deploy everything. So, package done. How am I going to release this particular stuff? I'm creating a new release definition. And I say I want to deploy it to an Azure App Service, which is basically templating right now. And as you can see, it generated already an environment which I will call dev, and the red exclamation mark indicates that there is something missing which I have to configure, but first I have to provide an artifact. The artifact is basically the build that I just created. So I'm choosing my ASP demo site CI. No, it's this. And I have to adjust this. And as I said, it's tightly integrated into Azure and makes your life pretty easy. So here it's asking me in this deploy Azure App Service task, it's asking me, hey, which subscription do you want to use? Where should it actually be deployed? I'm choosing my internal subscription. And hey, what kind of app service should I deploy this guy on? And it shows me the respective websites that I currently have. And that's it. Of course, you can add much more tasks there, but for the sake of time, let's do it like this and let it deploy in the background. We can check if this was successful later. Good. Questions in the end. So if you have some, note them. This was kind of the fast-paced introduction of what is Visual Studio Team Service, what does it look like, and how can I deploy the standard Hello World app to an Azure App Service. The next thing is, what are probably other possibilities in order to get started? Why do I need to configure everything by myself? Isn't there a way to have it scaffolded for me? And this is where we have the DevOps project that you can configure within Azure. Oh, I have not triggered the release, I just saved it, I guess. Yep, release this. Okay, so this is the Azure portal. Some of you are probably already familiar with that, but there is one thing you probably haven't heard about, which is the DevOps projects. I happen to have one already, but we will create a new one, and I will explain you what it is doing. The idea behind Azure DevOps project is to say, regardless of the language you have, so we have a couple of choices over here, we are providing you with an end-to-end solution, basically saying, here's your source code, here's a sample application, here's your build release, and this is deployed to something. And because I said regardless of the language, you can also if you scroll down over here, you can bring your own code. You don't need to have the basic Hello World application running in the respective language. You can bring your own code and have the scaffolding as well. So we are using the .NET stuff. We are saying, so we have two choices. If we want to target .NET Core or if you want to target .NET, and based on that, it will provide us with different services that are possible within Azure. If we are going with ASP.NET Core, it will provide us with the choice to say, okay, do you want to build this in a Docker container, for instance, that you then can run in web app for containers. So the web application that we just saw before was running on a Windows system, we now have the possibility to say this should run on a Linux-based system in a Docker container. Why is this cool? This is cool because you can bring your own runtime environment. You're no longer dependent on, hey, Microsoft is providing you with .NET Framework 4.7. You can also bring your .NET Framework to, this is a bad example because .NET Core might be the choice for that. But if you have some Python requirements that we are not meeting, you can bring it in your container, and it will be running in that environment. You will just choose from one of those guys, provide some additional information, like, do you want to create a new Visual Studio Team Services account? I happen to have one already, some of them. You need to provide a project name, and then it will also ask you about some details about the Azure service that is going to be provided. So in this particular case, it's a web app, as I said. You have to have a URL for that. It should be unique, and you should say in which environment it should run. If I would click done, it would trigger something for me. What is this something? I will discard this particular guy because I created something already. This time not a .NET application, but a static HTML website which can be deployed. And what you can see over here is, I think I might zoom in, is that it created the CI/CD pipeline where I can see, again, here is my code, what commit was made, the build that was running, and finally to which environment it was released. Also, I can see a brief overview of the application endpoint and which release it is running over here. What does it look like in Visual Studio Team Services? It created a new project, the DevOps project static. I'm leaving out the code part because it's just a basic HTML site. It created this, this build for me, which I also can have a look at. Which is basically building a Docker image in this particular case. So as easy as that, and it also generated some release configuration that is then be used in order to deploy this to my Azure application services. And that's basically it. Good, that was a quick overview about the Azure DevOps project. There might be situations, as I said before in the beginning, where you might have customers that are saying, I have a data center which is not running in any cloud, but it's running in my house. Can you provide me with service for those machines as well? So there might today be third-party agencies involved that are getting a ticket and then deploying your stuff. You might know such guys. But what would it mean if you are going to do their job, saying, I have a pipeline and I'm deploying at the customer side? This, of course, is possible. And here it is important. For us, it is not important if it is running on a Linux system, if it is a Windows system, if it is something else, or if it is running in some other cloud. This is not important for us. You can do that. The key for that is called deployment groups, which is basically saying, I have a couple of servers defined within a deployment group, and those cyan boundaries basically are describing tags. So those servers are tagged within the deployment group. And here, 4 of those servers are my web servers, and 2 servers are my database servers. What you can then say is, there's a small agent installed on those machines. Please deploy exactly the package that I was building previously to those machines, but the website should probably not go to the DB virtual machines, but to the web machines. And execute a script that I have defined, for instance, an MS deploy script on those machines. And it also allows you to say, don't do a deployment on all of those 4 machines in parallel, because it would mean downtime for your customers, but do it in a smart way and say, do it in parallel or rolling upgrades. And you have the choice to say, I want to do that for 2 machines in parallel, for 5 machines in parallel, or whatnot, whatever your environment supports. You can again see exactly what is happening, because those logs that we saw previously within the build is something you can also see when you are deploying to an on-prem machine. And with scalability, what we mean here is it is irrelevant if it is for 5 machines or if it is for 1,000 machines. You can handle every workload using deployment groups. So exactly, if you want to target only the web, or if you want to target only the databases, you can do that using tags. Giving you a quick introduction. So I am back to my Azure Projects project. And previously we saw that I had my build running, which was providing some, which was building my simple ASP web .NET application, and I want to deploy it to something, to a deployment group, and therefore we have deployment groups. In this particular case, it's just only one, but as you can already see, I have 2 servers running there. Let's have a look there. First of all, how am I going to provision those servers? What is needed? So if the servers are set up and some guy said, okay, this is my OS, it has the latest patch set and so on, what is necessary? It's just a small PowerShell script that is necessary. You just execute that, and it will ask you for a personal access token, which you can obtain from your account. Provide this token and you're good to go. That's it. The other thing is, if you want to tackle Linux workloads, you have another script that you can run on this machine, and it is exactly the same. Execute the script, provide the personal access token, and you have your machine. The result is that you have targets that you can see over here. And here, in this particular case, I have 2 machines, one web server, one database server. And we can see I have tagged those guys. Tagging is as easy as writing something and hitting enter. This would basically add another tag. But important is that you can also see what was deployed to those machines. I can see exactly those deployments, which build was deployed, from which release to which environment. Can get a more detailed overview, or another overview over here, because there might have been more deployments in the past. And you can also get an overview about the capabilities of the machine. In this particular case, it's a Windows machine, and it says, okay, I'm providing .NET Framework in this particular version, if you're interested in that. So far, we have just defined what kind of servers we have. How are we going to deploy our stuff to that? And here we are back to the releases. The release I previously created is, again, looking quite familiar. We have those artifacts that we want to deploy on one hand, and also we have our phases that we are going to execute on the machines. And in this particular case, I'm not saying it should be targeting Azure. It should be based on an IaaS deployment. It should on a deployment group. It asks me on which deployment group do you actually want to execute this particular step. I'm saying it should be on the on-prem web servers. And the tags are especially important, because this particular deployment is an IaaS deployment, which cannot happen on a Linux machine, and it should not happen on a database, of course. And if we are saying we want to tackle only one of those machines, I'm just providing my tag. And from the 2 servers it was targeting previously, it now is targeting only one server. And here is what you can configure in terms of parallelism. How many machines should be updated in parallel based on that? The rest is then pretty straightforward, and all of you might know this. So we are saying, okay, what is the name of the website I'm going to tackle? Where should my binaries go? Do you want to create an application pool? What is the name of the application pool? Are there some bindings that are necessary? So basically configuring the website itself. And then within that website, of course, we want to say what should be deployed. And here we are, of course, referring to the build that we previously built, namely in the linked artifacts, we are saying, please, in the drop folder, use this zip file that we created. And that's basically it. If we check what was happening before, we can see this guy. Can see that it succeeded, and also we can get exactly the logs to see what was happening basically. Here, which commands were executed on the target machine, which in my case was hosted within Azure, but it might also be that this is on your customer's end. And the deploy step as well, which is nothing else than which you also might be familiar, an MS deploy step. And that's it. Good. Deployment groups. The next thing is, because we are on a Sitecore conference over here, how can we leverage all of that for Sitecore? And how can we have a CI/CD pipeline targeting such deployments? This is also happening in exactly the same way. And I therefore have created an example which might not be the best practice though, because I am not too deep into Sitecore, be with me. So there might be issues, but I will show you what I did. I have a second repository within that, which is called Sitecore. And it doesn't contain the actual web code, because I have no idea how to do that with Sitecore. Though what I have is, I have a deploy folder which has a PowerShell script and some other information. In this particular case, this is no best practice, explicitly saying no best practice, because I have my PFX file over here. You shouldn't do that, store it somewhere else. But for the sake of simplicity, I have done it like this. And even my license file is over here. Don't do that. So what am I using? So I have a PowerShell script, which I should make a bit bigger, I guess. So which gets some kind of parameters saying, okay, where is the Sitecore Azure Toolkit SDK located? Where is my license file, my parameters file, and also my certificate file? And then it is referring to some templates. Templates, are you all familiar with the templates that I'm talking about here? Some yes, some no. So this is basically a JSON document describing the infrastructure that should result in, or should be provisioned within Azure. And you can do that in something we call an ARM template. A simple JSON structure describing what should happen, like desired state configuration. I'm providing a name, I'm providing a resource group, so basically in which resource group within Azure should this stuff be deployed. My subscription ID, in which location, and then I'm using the Sitecore Azure Toolkit to deploy my stuff. So here I'm just made myself easy, saying start Sitecore deployment with all those information, and the result is it provisioned everything for me. In addition to that, I have another file which is basically a parameters file. Of course, no best practice, because I have stored my passwords over here, which are very secret. Though the interesting part is that I have my, I should go there, my baseline package, or my packages over here, my Sitecore web deploy packages. So the best practice would be generate those packages in your build step and leave it within Visual Studio Team Services. Later on, if you want to deploy that, upload it to a probably blob store, obtain a secure token in order to access this particular guy, and provide this link as I did over here within the parameters file in order to deploy that. And for the packaging, you probably can use the Sitecore Azure Toolkit as well in order to generate those packages. How am I going to release that? So the build step is just put all those scripts in a folder and have some binary there. There's nothing special. My build step is, again, straightforward, saying, based on the artifact, I have some definitions, some phases, and I'm just deploying, or I'm just executing a PowerShell script. In this particular case, it is a so-called, or it's not called like this, but it's kind of a already pre-registered PowerShell session which is connected to my Azure subscription, and I'm just providing everything that is needed for this particular script, like, as I said, the where is the toolkit located, the license file, and so on. And the result out of such a deployment within Azure is that I have my Sitecore deployed like this. Where is this? Here. Within my resource group, I have a couple of databases. I have no idea if this is really like what is needed, but you are the Sitecore expert, so I guess it is needed. But most importantly is I also have a demo website that is running over here. And it will load in a bit. And it is providing the default Sitecore Experience Platform website. Good. What we just saw is, or what you now should have, is a basic understanding of what we mean by continuous delivery, and also how we can use continuous delivery with Azure services, on not only Azure services, but only tackling each and every target machine that also might be in a different cloud provider. Whatever is feasible, we can support it with Visual Studio Team services. Probably also you have a good idea of why we think this is the best tool for continuous delivery. And if you want to try that out within your environment, if you have already an MSDN license or your developer account, this is already included. Besides that, if you just start small, you can have 5 users.